Hello, welcome to, I believe, week 14. You are almost done. Checking my little notes here real quick. Yes, we are week 14. Week 16 is when your project is due, that big semester-long project. That is due in 2 weeks. So hopefully you're almost done. Hopefully you're still gathering your data. Haven't checked my messages today or yesterday, so I will see if anybody else is requiring data. I remember somebody messaged me a while ago and said something about a whole chunk of data missing. And I replied and I asked, what were you missing? I never got a reply. So if that person is watching this video, check your messages, because I did reply and I asked what you needed. And you're getting to the point where you really need that data. I'm considering making an official rubric to post so you see exactly how many points each part is worth. I don't know if that'll help or not, because it's been my experience that you have the people who bust butt on this project get so much out of it and get so into it that they actually keep tracking numbers afterwards, and they are really in there. And then you have the people who forgot about it, try to BS, and then turn in like this much, and then are shocked at their grade. I haven't had a whole lot of in between, but I'm considering trying to make something so it might help you with your writing part. Data. You were told how much to collect. Let us look at your thing. Okay, so let's go to semester-long project. And yeah, this one. So this has been here this whole time, telling you what you're supposed to do, how to pick, the fact that you're collecting it for every single week. You had to collect it for every week from week 2 through week 15. So that means through next week as well. I gave you week 1, so you would have 15 solid weeks of data. If you do not have data for week 1, and those dates would be, this is how I tell dates, that would be beginning January 9th. So January 9th to 15th, if you don't have your data for that day, for that week, you need to contact me, because you have to have week 1 data. You had to start collecting week 2, because I knew not everybody would have already gotten on board week 1. That's why I supply you with the first week. Then you have to collect all the way through week 15, which is next week. You should have already been writing your actual paper stuff, and I'm coming to that in a second. You should have been writing your thoughts, your predictions, what you're looking at, how you're trying to think critically, how to make sure that you're not just being biased, that you're just perpetuating false claims or anything like that. This is a science class. You are supposed to think scientifically. This means factual, not just opinion, not just I saw it on YouTube or I read it on Facebook, but actual fact, which is why I made you do the critical thinking lab. So, critical thinking lab, have to make a couple of comments. It was clear a lot of people are not paying attention to facts. A lot of people are just dead set on saying, I heard this and I think this, and then just stopping there. You can't do that. If you do that on the paper, you're not going to get points, because part of the paper is actually thinking critically. Now, in the lab, I try to show you a way to think critically. way. I tried to show you a way to think more science-based. In science, you do not prove yourself right. Anybody can prove themselves right. That's not a hard thing to do. You have to fail to disprove. So if you truly believe something, you have to do everything in your power to prove yourself wrong. Because if you do everything you can to prove that you are wrong and you can't prove it, that means you must be right because there's no evidence otherwise. This is extremely important because it helps remove bias. People have opinions. People have thoughts. People are like, I think blah, blah, blah. That's fine. That's normal. We've all heard the thing about everybody has an opinion, like everybody has a beep. We know this. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you are going to think critically, you have to question it. You have to try to prove yourself wrong. This means you don't just go to what news source you know is going to back you up. Somebody I remember said that they guessed they just didn't know what sources to go to prove their point. That is the opposite of what you're supposed to do. If you truly want to try to prove yourself wrong, you need to look at every possible angle. Like if I make a statement, and it could be environmental, it can be political, it can be whatever. If I want to try to disprove myself, I am going to look at New York Times. I'm going to look at Washington Post. I am going to look at Fox News. I'm going to look at Bloomberg. I might even look at Mother News, something, I can't remember, it's like Mother Nature News or something, MNN. I am going to look at ones that are this far, ones that are this far, and everything in between. Because if I look at all of these and I cannot prove myself wrong, that was a good effort. If I want to say I believe something massively Republican, and I am only going to look at Fox News, that's not trying to prove myself wrong. That's literally trying to prove myself right. If I say I'm going to try to prove something that is very Democrat, and then I go to Fox News, oh, that's a lot more difficult. You know, you have to admit that. So, and no, I'm not meaning to pick on Fox News. Do I have an opinion about Fox News? Yeah. Which brings me to sources. If only one source says something and you try to find it anywhere else and you can't, or everywhere you find points back to one source, that's not valid, because that's also part of science. It's not only one person or one group saying it, it has to be across the board. Good example of this. Some people have probably heard or truly believe that vaccines cause autism. That is not true. 100% not true. There was this one guy way back here who wanted to prove it, used a very small sample study, faulty data, and published a paper saying that the MMR vaccine caused autism. Whole bunch of people quoted this one guy. All this stuff went back there. This entire huge anti-vax movement went crazy because of this one guy who said vaccines cause autism. Guess what? He's wrong. They don't. It was faulty data. He manipulated the data to prove himself right, has since recanted the data. It has been proven wrong. I can't even tell you how many times. And yet you still have people who always point to that one source. That's not valid. That's not critical thinking. That's why you have to look at multiple sources. Use your brain. Look at it. For the vaccines and autism thing. One, do I take it as a personal affront that people would rather possibly die of a preventable disease than chance having autism? Yeah, I find that rather offensive considering I have autism and I don't think I'm that horrible of a person. My kids are both autistic. They're friggin' brilliant and I would not change them for the world. So when people sit there and go, oh, but it gives you autism. What do you even mean by that? Okay, that's a side note. But here's the example I normally use in class. When I'm in person, I ask everybody to raise their hand if they have ever had a vaccine. If you go to SGSC, you've had a vaccine. That's the rule. You had to turn in your vaccination record in order to go to school. So you have to raise your hand because you've been vaccinated. And then I say, how many people here have autism? Most people drop their hand. Right there, I've already disproven it. It really sometimes is that simple. It's just you keep saying the same lie because you have heard it so many times, you've never once researched it. And then when you did, you probably just Googled something like vaccines give you autism, which will of course throw you towards the articles like that. So if you're trying to prove that vaccines do not cause autism, or like you say, I believe vaccines cause autism, you have to then look up vaccines do not cause autism and read all of that. So you have to look at the opposite of what you believe in order to see if you are correct. Is there a massive conspiracy on this entire friggin' planet to say that vaccines are the cure-all? No. Is there a conspiracy that all the different countries are lying about how many people were killed by COVID? No. The reality is fewer people are listed having died of COVID than probably actually did die. Early on in the pandemic, people said, oh, well, I heard, and they're like, they could die of a motorcycle accident. And they write COVID on there because they're getting extra money. That's not true. Find your sources for these things. Prove yourself wrong. Do your best to prove yourself wrong because that is not true. That is just another example of perpetuating a lie and causing more damage. I think the rates are overblown. Again, they actually don't claim as many that are there. You also have a lot of people who are doing at-home tests and they're not reporting. So the reality is that our case numbers are actually probably higher than they really are. A lot of the information in the news currently is they're testing the wastewater to find out how much is showing up in the wastewater. And if you are questioning what that means, it means the stuff coming through the water system from people's toilets, because the antibodies are in your urine and your feces. And so when it's flushed down the toilet, it's all coming in there, and then they can see how much of the percent is rising. So not even looking at anything else, just looking at straight up facts, they can tell about the increase. Saying I read that 5G gave you COVID, that's the one that has me the most baffled. I've actually had a couple of people say that, yes, they heard that and they believed it. And I've asked people to please explain why. I really, really want to understand this one. Because electricity can't cause a virus. And if you look through history, you'll see when they first came up with just electricity, like, you know, our power lines, that they were afraid that was going to cause a pandemic and stuff like that. So this is something historically that's happened again and again and again. If you've ever heard that phrase, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, it really is true, because we've been doing it a lot. So any of your snap judgments, or what your friends or your family or your neighbor or somebody you follow online has said, instead of just going straight with that, use this. You have a brain. I want you to stretch it. I want you to work it. Try to prove yourself wrong. Some people in the critical thinking lab did exactly that. You did a wonderful job. Most people kind of missed the point. They gave me a bunch of data and then they were very generic. And some people actually, this my brain couldn't wrap around. Some people actually said they found by searching that they were wrong, but they still hold by this belief. I don't understand that. If the facts show you were wrong, why are you then blindly holding on to something you now know is wrong. So many examples I want to use for this, but I'm afraid that it would go wrong and then people would yell at me. So basically, I'm thinking things like slavery and racial profiling. You can't just look at something and just because people have always done it, decide this is right. You can't look at something and just because a majority says it means it's right. You can't do that. There is no conspiracy when you're talking about science. That is part of why science is beautiful. Science is just fact. It doesn't give a crap what you believe, does not care what political stance you have. It is just fact. It is just science. There is no opinion. There is no right or left, blue or red. There's none of that. That's why I love science. So when doing a science paper, try to be science. Ignore all that extra crap and look at only the facts. Will some of the facts possibly scare you? Yeah. But that's life. I mean, again, so many other analogies to throw in there, but I'm trying not to go there. So when you're doing this paper, you need to be thinking critically. You need to show me that you actually thought critically. You can't just hold on to a belief because that's what you want. If you're going to do that, you have to tell me what the actual facts are. Tell me what you've decided you're staying with and explain why you're staying with it, even though it is not factual. If you can do that, then I'll let you get away with it. But you have to tell me why you're ignoring the facts and sticking with what you've decided, because my brain just can't comprehend that. Vaccinations, COVID vaccines, have to cover this one. The number of people who write that the COVID vaccine clearly doesn't work, because I know people who got the vaccine and still got COVID. This is one of the things that drives me crazy. You have to understand what the purpose of the vaccine is. The COVID vaccine is not to keep you from catching COVID. That's wrong. That is one of those things that people have just repeated, and no one, and people who keep repeating it haven't bothered learning. What the vaccine is for is to help prepare your body, help your body recognize it so it is better capable of fighting it. This is the reason why even if you're vaccinated, you can still spread COVID. So you can be double vaxxed and boosted, which I am, and it is still 100% possible to contract COVID and to spread COVID. So if I caught COVID right now, being double vaxxed and boosted, I could still get sick. I probably would get sick because I have asthma, my lungs are crap, and certain things with it being respiratory, that's going to kick my butt. And I'm also A positive blood type, and A positive blood is more susceptible to COVID. I don't know if you know that one, but A positive is more susceptible, O is more resistant. So I am like a perfect little package for COVID to kick my butt. So being vaccinated and boosted, I can still get COVID and I will probably still get sick, but it won't be horrible sick, and my chances of not dying from it are increased. Person I'm married to is O positive blood, also boosted, double vaxxed and boosted. Probably won't get COVID, but if contracted coronavirus, could still spread it to me, and then I could still get sick. This is how households have cases where this person who is working around people who might have COVID can test negative, but the person who stays at home all day can still test positive. This person is type O, going around here. This person is type A and staying at home. This person comes home and gives it to the person at home. That's the thing. This thing is insane. It is fascinating, deserves a lot of respect. If it wasn't killing so many people, I would love to just keep studying it. It is fascinating. But you need to understand that the COVID vaccination is doing the job it's supposed to, which is make the amount of illness lower and the number of deaths even lower. It's to help you survive the illness, not to block it. That is the same thing that the flu vaccine does. That is different than like the polio vaccine. The vaccine is to help us fight it. If you wish to look up on your own, which you should, look up the rates of hospitalizations and deaths in areas, and then look up which of the ones in the hospital and which ones died were vaccinated and were not vaccinated. Don't just look state by state. Look at the actual hospital, or look at your county. Look up hospitalizations for COVID in your county, and then look up the vaccines for the hospitalizations, because that's one of the things the hospital has to mark down. And the rates might surprise you. It's substantial. It shows you that the vaccine and the booster is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And everyone who does that, well, my neighbor got vaccinated, they got sick, clearly it doesn't work. That just means you don't understand what it's supposed to be. So instead of perpetuating ignorance of the vaccine, and ignorance is not an insult, let me tell you that. Ignorance just means you didn't know any better. So instead of perpetuating an ignorance on a topic, educate yourself so you can make educated comments and help educate those around you. Because the only way anything ever changes or gets better is if we help educate each other. We stop just doing this thing and refusing to learn. Open your ears, start to research, answer the questions. And like I said, prove yourself wrong. Do your best to prove yourself wrong, because that is how you will learn more than anything in this entire world. And will some of these things be uncomfortable? Yes, of course. But will you, for the most part, be better off? Yes, because an educated opinion just makes more sense. And here's where I have a hard time saying stuff, because do I know that some people would prefer to just live with just covering their ears and covering their eyes? Sure. But gosh, why would you? Why wouldn't you want to actually understand what's happening around you and educate yourself? So I'm hoping that's what you will do. You have 2 more weeks to work on this. So if you haven't started doing this, the critical thinking part and going back over what you say your beliefs were and trying to prove yourself wrong and backing it up, you need to do that. Remember to look for valid sources. Wikipedia is not a valid source. Can you go to Wikipedia and then grab the sources that they have? You can totally do that, but go to those sources and make sure they're actually good sources. There is a lot of BS out there, so you have to actually be careful. If you do a Google search and you just read a blurb and then you reference the Google search, that is not a source. When you find a blurb that you like, click it, go there. The best area to find a lot of good information, but it will take you effort, go to Google Scholar. Google Scholar will take you to scholarly articles, which are peer-reviewed, which are good sources, valid sources. So I would recommend that. I will be off and on throughout the week. I'm going to try to be up on here because time is ticking. Message me if you need anything. If anyone needs a one-on-one Zoom so we can chat, you can pick my brain, I can answer questions, anything, just let me know. If you request a meeting with me, please tell me don't just say, I want to meet on Zoom. Say, I would love to have a Zoom meeting. Is it possible? And give me a few options of days and times, and then check for a reply. Every semester, I have somebody who will ask for it. I will reply, and then they will wait like 4 days to look, and then the time window that I had open is gone. So if you want a meeting, ask, give me options, make sure to double check for my replies, and we can totally make it work. Because I would rather you have a well done final project than just slap something together last minute. It's worth a lot of points. Yes, I have given extra credit on these for people who have done a really good job because, well, I believe in rewarding good behavior. But it's also really painful to read horrible papers. So let me know if I can help. Yeah, I think that's it. So get to work. Peace out.